One of my allegedly neurotypical friends, God help her, is single and frequently comes to me for advice, or at least commiseration, with is he autistic or is he just an asshole? Now, as someone on the spectrum, I could be offended by this, but I understand where she's coming from, because autism has always been considered to be a white man's illness. It was originally thought to only occur in white men, and I have talked on here about the underdiagnoses of women and people of color, particularly Black people, with ADHD and autism, because it doesn't always show up the same way, and some of that is because culturally we're not allowed to. I didn't think I was autistic for the longest time because a lot of the scales and stereotypes that I heard were that you don't have empathy and you don't care about other people. I was like, no, I mean, I care about other people. I just don't feel like I have to go with the crowd if the crowd is doing something that I see as stupid. I think there's still a lot to unpack there. And I've made videos before on how a lack of empathy isn't autism, it's psychopathy. And I think a lot of the stereotypes of what we see as acceptable bad white man behavior is interpreted as autism, and it's not helping the stigma of autism. One of my good friends here, Grant Harris, who has written 3 books, by the way, had a fabulous post yesterday that I want to share. And I also appreciate that he's one of the few people on LinkedIn like me who's willing to drop a curse word. He says, autism isn't an excuse to be an ass, full stop. Let's not pretend that bad behavior and autistic expression are the same thing. They're not even in the same galaxy. One is a choice. The other is a neurological operating system trying to survive in a world that's buffering. Ooh. Do y'all know how good his books are? When poor decision making on autism, what they're really doing is throwing the entire neurodivergent community under a gaslit diesel powered bus, then asking us to thank them for the ride. And that messaging doesn't just float around social media for a few days. It trickles down like toxic runoff into every HR complaint, every missed promotion, they just don't have executive presence. It's an unwritten rule. Financial costs. Companies lose up to $363 billion annually from voluntary turnover, often driven by misinterpreting disability expression as performance issues. He put the source in the comments. Autistic people, especially Black and brown adults, are more likely to be misunderstood, underemployed, or penalized for behavior that is actually sensory regulation, stress response, or masking fatigue. He also put the source in the comments. So what can leaders do? If you're a senior leader, manager, and you're unsure if what you're seeing is a behavioral problem or neurodistinct expression, start with these 3 questions. Is this a pattern or an escalation under pressure? Have we ever asked what accommodations they think would help? Is the standard we're holding them to actually written down and accessible? And I would add, does it make sense and actually help your performance, or is it just normal for you? Because the difference between disruptive and distressed is often just context and compassion. Let's get real. Autism doesn't cause harm. Unchecked power, unexamined privilege, and unaccountable platforms do. What would it look like if we built workplaces where that distinction wasn't weaponized but understood? And of course, as I have for the past 5 years, I had to pipe in with how do we tag Elon? You can check out his books. This is the first one. I don't get paid to do this. I'm just a fan. My book on the unwritten rules of work for the working class and neurodivergence comes out this fall. You can get a free chapter in my bio.